So, you guys like when I talk about weapons, huh? Seriously though, thank you so much for 1,000 views on a single video, it means so much to me. Anyway, let's cut to the chase. In this video, I'm going to be ranking every weapon that appears in a Rec Room original. I'm going to rank them considering their use cases and abilities in every game they feature in, so some things may rank higher or lower than you might expect. Going from the bottom upwards, let's start at the F tier. So starting out with the F tier, both of these weapons are god-awful. In my opinion, there is no reason to ever be using them. To start off, we have the plush fish. And now, don't get me wrong, I do love the fish, I think it's really cute and I like the sound design for this thing, but it is a joke weapon, it does less damage than every other melee weapon in Isle, and it has worse range, so there's no point ever actually using it. And next up in F tier, one that I'll be way less nice to, this thing. I won't even grace it with a name. I cannot put into words how much I hate this weapon. It is so beyond useless. It takes so long to charge up the initial arrow only for it to do horrible damage. It's the only weapon I've never seen get a kill in Rec Royale. It's so bad, Rec Room made an entirely different crossbow for their next quest that had one. All this crossbow exists to do is to get all of those nice Dryad skins that we could have just gone for the Hunter's crossbow. But thankfully, we're already done with the F tier. From D tier forwards, everything here I could genuinely see somebody using. And next up, we have the D tier. And now, don't get me wrong, I did say that everything after F tier is usable at the very least, but these weapons are still real stinkers. They're pretty bad, but if you do just really like them, you're still able to use them. Starting up not so strong, we've got the paint launcher. The paint launcher is honestly just mediocre at every role it has. It has bad zoning capabilities, mid DPS, and the screen mode animations are really annoying to use. Next up, a weapon everyone knows I hate, the laser burst rifle. This thing is just redundant in every game it's in. In laser tag, you spawn with a better gun. In Jumbotron, it's outclassed instantly by the pistol again, or in under a minute by the shotgun. And in Rec Royale, it does less damage than the paint burst rifle and uses up more ammo, as well as needing to be reloaded so you lose that potion slot in your hand. I think its main use case is the comfort of the weapon. Even when I'm pretty rusty, I'll still take a high rarity laser AR in Rec Royale over a burst rifle. But at least I'm pretty sure it gets used in some Jumbotron speedruns nowadays, that's kinda cool. And finally, for D tier, we have the Hunter's crossbow. I actually really like this weapon. I think it's one of the most fun quest weapons, and it's one of the few weapons that has a spin reload. Unfortunately, bows do exist, and you would never use this thing in Rec Royale because of the limited ammo and bad damage. Anyways, that is every weapon that I would either consider to be straight up bad or just not great. Let's move on to the C tier. Now, in C tier, these ones aren't actually half bad. You could definitely get away with using them, but they either have a big drawback or they're just lacking in the stats department. To start us off, we have the magic wand. This weapon is actually really fun. The design is great, and I think it has some of Rec Room's best skins. Sadly, it is prone to friendly fire, and it doesn't do great damage. It's really nice for crowd control though. Next up, we've got the quest shield. And yes, this thing is under the weapons category, so I'm including things like this. Shields are really good, there's not much else to say really. If this was in any PvP, it would be S tier because of its sheer size, but it's in two games that you don't really need a shield in. Holding it stops you from being able to use a bow too, which I'd argue is the main issue with it. Next up, we've got the bar stool. It's the thing that saved you from jail in the first place in Isle, so we gotta give it credit for that. But also, it's just really fun to smash a chair over something's head. It breaks fast, but it does good damage as a trade-off, so it's up here in C. Next up, we have the laser beam cannon. Like I said in the weapon rework video, in Rec Royale this thing just has abysmal range, and in laser tag I just don't see why anyone would really use it. The hitbox for this thing is so big and it makes you such a big target. If you get in range with it in Rec Royale though, it can be a really good and funny weapon. So I'm giving it some points for that. And finally in C tier is the paint thrower. This thing's cringe, it's somehow worse than the laser AR in Royale. Again, go check out my weapon rework video for some more thoughts on it. Again, overall, C tier isn't a bad lineup. These weapons are alright and you can use them if you want, but I just personally wouldn't. Up next, the B tier. Alright, these weapons have some real firepower behind them. These weapons are when it starts getting serious. You'll be getting some real value if you use these right. First up, we've got throwables. There isn't really much to say about consumable throwable items. I think they're alright, but I think the lack of AoE makes them annoying, and there's just better options. They're kind of alright though, I'd say they're average. Next up is the broom and the oar. These things have the exact same placement for me. They're not bad weapons, but they're not incredible necessarily. Their wingspan is really nice though. Next is the shovel and the pitchfork. Same point as previously, I just think they're slightly higher because I think they're slightly better in Crescendo. Next up in B tier, we have the paint shotgun. It's alright on some paintball maps, but in Rec Royale, it's just the worst shotgun in basically every way. It has less range and it shoots a bit slower, I'm pretty sure. You can't go wrong with it though. Originally this was top of C tier, but last night I was playing in a Rec Royale scrim and I managed to get some pretty good value out of the paint shotgun. Essentially, this thing is deadly in the right hands, but pretty lackluster otherwise. And finally, to end B tier, the king of mid is the coconut bomb. The coconut bomb has one job, and that's to eliminate those enemies that throw them in the first place, and it does it damn well, so there's nothing really to fault it for. The only reason it's not any higher is because the rum jug can do this, and it doesn't provide any other value really. Just to take a step back and look quickly before we get into the A and the S tier, we can see that everything here is pretty niche overall. You don't see people using them too often. So now, let's get into the serious stuff. This is the A tier. Everything past this point is really good. They can really get things done, but just barely don't make the cut for the best of the best in S tier. To start us off, we've got the rum jug. Now, the rum jug is really good in Isle. It has low AoE and it sometimes just doesn't work, but it's really useful in the situations where it does work and you can get your hands on one. It gets a couple extra bonus points too for giving us the name for a POI in Rec Royale. Next, we have the frying pan. Now, the frying pan is solid in Isle for dealing good damage with okay durability, but where it really shines in my opinion is in Rec Royale. You see, there are some pans in Messy Mess Hall that while you shouldn't be able to grab them, you can, and you can use them as shields. I go over this a bit more in my Rec Royale facts video if you want to go check that out. Obviously though, this has been banned in leagues, so it's not very useful and that's what keeps it out of S tier overall in my opinion. Next up, the dynamic duo, the sword and the cutlass. In my opinion, the cutlass is slightly higher than the sword, but it's not enough for me to put them separately. They're both really good as melee options in their quests. The cutlass has nice sound and is more relevant, and swords let you parry the witches in Crimson, so I think they're both really deserving of an A tier. Next up for the A tier is the railgun. This weapon is the definition of the phrase always the bridesmaid, never the bride. It really pains me to not put this thing in the S tier. I'm working on a longer video about the railgun, but to keep it brief, I think this is the most underrated weapon in the game. Its damage is incredible, the fire rate being higher than the sniper while doing almost the same damage is really solid. The things keeping it out of S for me right now are the laser shotgun being better in Jumbotron and the pistol being better in laser tag. There simply aren't enough people using it in Rec Royale either because of how hard it is to get value with consistently. Next for the A tier, the blunderbuss. This thing is just the GOAT. I would put this in low S if it wasn't for the really bad range. It's awesome in all of the quests it's in, and in Rec Royale it's pretty much a free one-shot if you get in range because of a bug. Next we have the paint mine. The mines are kind of a gimmick in paintball, only being on one map, but in Rec Royale they can be put on your backpack, essentially turning you into a porcupine and also allowing you to tank some extra damage at range. Keep in mind, most of the time, when you pop one of these mines, it will trigger a chain reaction and spreads to all of them. So I'd say put one on all of your teammates if possible. Next up for A tier, we've got the laser shotgun. Now, while there's only like one laser tag player who can genuinely make these things work at a high level, and in Rec Royale they aren't too great, laser shotguns are invaluable to any Jumbotron player and have been used by everyone from casuals to speedrunners for years. It is weighed down by being kind of bad in everything other than Jumbotron, but it does deserve its spot high up here. Next up for the A tier, we've got the paint shield. Now, why is there such a large gap between the two shields? You could honestly argue S tier for the paint shield. It's one of those where it really comes down to your preference. In a one-shot PvP, the ability to just block damage is insane. A lot of League players prefer using a shield over double pistol, and I can totally see why. In a duel, it can be so annoying when you hit like 5 shots in a row that all do nothing, because some guy's holding a big hunk of plastic. And now, finally, the king of not quite S tier? A shield potion? Yeah, I don't know, these are considered weapons in the Make Pen tab. In Rec Royale, shield is so valuable. I mean, it is literally a second health bar. You can't really go wrong with carrying some shield on your hip. The more shots you can take, the longer you can be in a fight, and the more value you can get for your team. Also, I should mention the fact that if you're being shot and you have shield, people might be slightly less focused on shooting you since they'll be able to see that you have shield and might shoot people who are on green health instead, who they'll assume are lower. Now, you see, these are what you want to be using. Any seasoned Rec Room player will have ample experience with all of the following weapons, and if you don't, what are you doing? First up, we've got the health potion. Yes, there is enough of a difference for me to want to put this in a higher tier than the shield potion. When you're in Swarm in Rec Royale, the bees will deal damage over time that just completely ignores your shield and goes straight for your health bar. By using health potions, you're able to do what we call a swarm rotate, allowing yourself to essentially cloak in the swarm and either start firing from the inside or rotate off to a new angle to help support your team. Really cool high skill strategies here that you can do with this thing. It's really valuable on teleport mode especially, but you should only do this if you work well under pressure. Next up for the S tier, we have the whip. I just find the whip to be such a reliable weapon in Crescendo. You could honestly just play Crescendo for your whole life without using any other weapon than the whip, and while it might not be optimal, it would still work really well. It's pretty much the best weapon there. Next on the list for S tier, we have the laser launcher. I very nearly put the laser launcher down in A tier, but I just think this thing is so good. It's such an incredible zoning tool. It lets you clear out so much space, do so much crowd control, and it does really good damage as well. The only things holding it back from being higher up on S tier are the size of its hitbox and the ammo issues it has in Rec Royale. Next up for the S tier, we have the flintlock. I think that this thing is terrifying. Obviously, it's really strong in the quests, and it's the only reason the cutlass isn't up here in S tier, but in Rec Royale, if you're fighting someone who can actually aim with one of these, there's just not much you can do. It's one of the few weapons that's ever received a nerf, because it used to be a guaranteed kill with a headshot dealing 200 damage. Next up, we've got my worst enemy, the grenade. Please nerf these things. All the grenades are so strong. It's a free kill in paintball and laser tag from a long range through cover. I know, right? It's a niche but powerful tool in Royale for engaging in a fight, and they're even pretty good in Jumbotron despite not being very common. Anyway, from now, we have the top 5, yes, 5, weapons in Rec Room, so just dial in for a moment. On number 5, we have the sniper rifle. I don't really know what you expect me to say about the sniper that hasn't already been said. It's a fairly fast shooting sniper, it doesn't require you to do any reloading, it does insane damage, and it has a scope. Also, because Rec Room's a really well made game, half the time you'll miss your shot and it will just still hit for some reason. At number 4, we have the bow. Especially with double shot being now a feature, this thing is just so good. Bows are so much fun in VR, and this thing is just a menace. It's not even half bad in Royale, especially on screen mode. And now, the silver medal of my tier list goes to the Paint Burst Rifle. This thing is incredible. In paintball, it is disgustingly strong, and in Rec Royale, it could be argued as the best weapon. It does shotgun levels of DPS from every range, lets you have a free hand for an extra inventory slot, and isn't hard to get plenty of ammo for. You can't really go wrong with one of these. If you're a Rec Royale player trying to get better, learning the burst rifle is crucial. And now, that leaves the most obvious answer for the best gun in Rec Room. The pistols. Oh boy, who could have seen this coming? The two best guns in the game are the two pistols. Now, just hear me out. You start with a pistol in both paintball and laser tag, and in both of those games, it can just be the only gun you ever grab with 0 issues, especially in laser tag. While I think it does come down to preference, I'm going to give the slight edge to the laser pistol here today. While the PSI Buster in Rec Royale does a whopping 52 damage to the head, I think the laser pistol is slightly better overall because of how much higher the fire rate ceiling is, and it's the best gun in its original Rec Room original laser tag. The paint pistol is my preferred option nowadays though for the free offhand. As a teleport Rec Royale player, there's nothing like taking a paint pistol and some health potions into Swarm during the endgame and tapping on some people's heads. Anyways, this is my complete tier list for every weapon in Rec Room. While I know some of these aren't technically weapons, they do appear either in the weapons tab or are used as a weapon in a Rec Room original. What do you think about this? How would you change some of the ratings I've given? I'm doing this from the perspective of a Rec Royale player, and I do play a bit of laser tag, but obviously I don't really play quests, so I kind of just winged it with some of these, like those throwables. Just to end this video off, I do want to give a big thank you to anyone who watches any of my videos. I didn't expect to get this level of support or any at all really, and I'm really glad that people are enjoying these videos as much as I am making them. But anyway, that's all I have for today, so bye bye. Next up for A tier, we have... Why am I so far forward? Oh, it's right there.